Okay, so I call this video "Stop Trying to Drink from the Fire Hose." And I know that's kind of a corny phrase. It's something my old boss used to say all the time, and it always kind of cracked me up. But I thought it was the perfect title for what I wanted to get across in this video. And that is, when you're learning how to play guitar online with all the information that's out there, it feels like drinking from a fire hose. There's so much coming at you. And one thing that happens because of all the information, besides the fact that you get overwhelmed, is that you get distracted and move on to something else without finishing the thing that you started. And I get comments and emails from you all the time saying that, and I do it too, so I can totally relate to this. But you're starting learning one thing, you see something that you think is cool, and you start learning how to play it, and then you see something that you think is maybe even cooler, a shinier penny over here, so you follow that. And that never ends because there's always something better, and so you never really resolve anything. And I'm only saying that because I do it too. And even though I teach guitar online, I'm still learning. I still do the same things you do. I go on YouTube and TikTok and see the same stuff. And I find myself doing that. And I have to remind myself, we have to go back and we have to finish the one thing we started. So my point in this video, the one thing I want you to walk away from, is that some of this is on you when it comes to making it click in your own mind. What I mean by that is there's so much information that's out there that's being spoon-fed to you. There's a lot of spoon feeders. I'm one of them. I'm always putting out content. But it really comes down to you to make the connection points in your own mind to make this stuff work. You have to remember, now I'm talking about for those of you that are learning how to improvise. And if you're just wanting to learn how to play an Eagles song or a Beatles song and just memorize something, this doesn't relate so much because that really is just kind of memorizing. This is for those of you that want to speak the language of guitar, and you see a group of people playing, you want to grab your guitar and just go join in. You don't know what key they're in, you don't care. You can play, you can speak the language. That's what I'm talking about. So if that's you, you have to go into discover mode or detective mode, put your detective hat on, and you have to really understand why everything works. So let me give you an example here. I'm actually going to give you two, and just to try and make my point here. So I remember learning this lick. These are two just simple things that I learned early on. And by the way, I learned to play before the internet, and I know a lot of you also have learned to play before the internet. Maybe you've come back to learning how to play now, or sort of phase 2 in your learning journey. But if you learned to play before the internet, you know what I'm talking about. Things were a lot simpler then. In some ways it was better, because when somebody would show you something like this thing, that's a little blues thing that you've probably heard, probably know how to play. When somebody showed me that for the first time, I was blown away. I couldn't believe that I could do something like that myself on the guitar. And so I learned how to play it. I memorized it. 7th fret, 4th string, play that. Then do that little hammer on to the 6th fret, 3rd string. And so I learned it that way. It was very much connected to the frets. And then once I got it, it was like, now what? I could go up to somebody and go, hey, check this out. It ended there. That was the end of it. I didn't know what to do with it. And so it wasn't until years later that I realized, oh, that's just a lick, and I can learn other licks, and I can put those licks together, and I can tell a story. I can play a solo. And so I realized that these notes, and part of my telling you that I learned this before the internet was because it was before the internet, it was a long time before more information came my way. So there was there was probably months before I learned something else. So I had to take that little lick and spend a lot of time with it. And I got very intimate with it, and I knew it pretty well. And I would sit there and look at it and go, okay, wait a minute. So that's an A note. And then there's this little thing, which is an A triad. Oh wait, that's just your A bar chord, using the E shape. And so I was kind of seeing the chord in that lick. So I didn't know what this was yet, but I was figuring it out. I thought, well, I don't know what that is, but I know it works with that, right? And so now I thought, well, okay, so I know what this is as it relates to an A chord, but what if I wanted to do that in a different key, like B? all I had to do was find, well, I knew that that was my A note, right? That's where I was barring to play that chord. So if I play this note, that's a B note. So therefore, that must be a B chord using the E shape. Therefore, that little lick must be right there. Now this seems super elementary to a lot of you, but it's this discovery process that made me realize how the whole thing works. And that's what I hope you get out of this, is that, yeah, somebody showed me the lick, and then they walk away. And then it's on me to connect it to something that makes it tangible, something that I can use. If I want to learn the language, all I did here was memorize. It'd be like somebody teaching you a phrase in Portuguese and you memorize this phrase. You have no idea what you're saying, but you can say it and it sounds pretty good to somebody that knows the language. But to me, I didn't really know what it was. So anyway, so you have to think of it that way. You have to think about, as you learn stuff, instead of taking an entire solo and learning it, that's one way of learning. That's part of it. But there's another whole piece, which is take a little part of a solo. Take a little phrase that you like. You know, it could be something like, something as simple as that. That would be like an E minor pentatonic lick, right? That would be pattern 1 of your minor pentatonic scale. Now this video is not about getting specific about fret numbers, but I'm just trying to, if I like the way that sounds, I need to connect it to my chord so that if I wanted to do it in F, I'd go, right? If I wanted to do it in F sharp, no, there it is, right? So you have to be able to connect it back to something. To me, it's chords. It's those 5 chord shapes out of the cage system. That's the best system for me. Now everybody's different. And I know some people out there don't like the cage system. They see that as not a good thing. To me, it's the most organized way to look at the fretboard. I have yet to find a better system for organizing it in my own mind. However, I know some of you out there, you see it differently. You see the fretboard in specific note names. You look at the fretboard and all the names of the notes light up. And you want to know all those note names within the scales and the chords. And if that's you, you may have a different system. So you have to connect this stuff back to something that means something to you. One other quick example, and I actually used this in a lesson that I did last week, which was EP 468, a little country blues standalone thing that you can play by yourself. But I used this lick over a G chord. I went something like, and then it resolves to the C. So it's, and in that video I said I didn't really remember where I got that. I thought it was Tony Rice, and I'm still not 100% sure where it all came from. But I do remember this, as I thought about it. This note is an F note that fits within the G chord because it's the note that makes it a G7. So if we think about a G7, if I told you play a G7, this is how most of us would play it, right? We think about the F note up here. That's the common way to play it. It wasn't until years later that I discovered, oh wait, there's another F right here, 3rd fret 4th string. So I could technically, play a G7 chord like that. You never really see it taught that way, or I never did, but that's another way to do it. But when I realized that one note, and how that 7 chord, that dominant chord, wants to resolve to its 1 chord, I wanted to take that and learn it in different spots. And I remember doing this with this one specific note. So that's what actually gave me the idea for making this video. But if I'm connecting it back to chord shapes, then you got to follow me here. So I'm thinking about the G chord, the G chord shape, the G chord shape. So this is the G chord using the G chord shape. If I play the A chord using the G chord shape, I'd be playing it up here. So I slide everything up 2 frets. Now I'm not playing all 6 strings. I'm just playing the top 4 just so you can see what I'm talking about. But that little note, that 7 note, would be right there. Now, which is pretty cool because when you think about playing an A7 chord, you don't usually think about playing it like that. But that's another way you can do it. And so you could do that resolve to the 1 chord, just like that. So that would be your A to your D. That's your G shape to your C shape. So it's just like in first position, G shape to the C. So once you get these shapes down, it's like, oh, I can do this anywhere. So if I'm playing it up here, it would be a C. So this would be a C7. And then I resolve to the F. Now notice I'm only playing strings 4, 3, and 2. I'm not doing the full chord. That's another thing that took me years and years to realize. I don't have to play all 6 strings. Like if I play a G chord down here, I would play all 6 strings. But if I'm playing a G chord, if I'm using that chord shape and I'm playing an A chord, for example, you can just do it like that, or play the bottom part of it. You don't have to play all 6 strings. There's no rules on this stuff. You're just trying to make stuff that sounds good. So anyway, it was just through that discovery process that I took that one note and I developed a 7 chord out of it. But then I could start working that into licks. Like that. Or I could go. So I would do that in a different key. I'd go like, you know, and I would start to see how it fits in. Oh wait, so that's my A chord using the G shape. That means my A major pentatonic scale is right there as well. So now I can play A major pentatonic licks, work in that 7 chord, and then resolve to the 1 chord. So it just like the one note started to unravel ideas for me. And had the internet been around, I would have been too distracted by something else. I would have never had the boredom and the time to take that one note and kind of play around with it, massage it, play it in different keys, and just really, you know, be a detective and try and understand it. But it's that process that made it stick more in my brain, and I think that's a missing component that doesn't get talked about enough. But you have to make those connection points that work best for you. I'm always going to share the things that work best for me in the way that I see it, but we're all different in this. And so some of us look at scales, some of us see chords, some of us see individual notes. But it all really comes down to, does it sound good or not? And so, you know, these are all just things to kind of keep in mind. We could take another little example. You could take the major scale, like the C major scale. I remember learning that in first position like that. And I thought, yeah, cool, I got it. I got my C major scale. So I started working out some licks. Little simple things with that major scale. And then I realized, oh wait, you could play the major scale in different positions. And then you could play it in different octaves. And then I started getting overwhelmed by that. You know, I remember thinking that, like, I thought I had it. I thought it was done. But there's, obviously you can repeat these notes in different spots. But in the end, it doesn't really matter so much because it's still those same notes in the C major scale. You could just learn them in one spot, and you might be a little bit limited because you've got some open strings and you can't bend those strings and things. But my point is don't let all of the other options creep in. It's really easy to let that happen. Take the little pieces that you know and just milk them for all they're worth, because you can get a lot of mileage out of them that way. I hope this has resonated with somebody out there and helped you, maybe alleviated some anxiety. It's super common. If you're feeling that, just know that everybody goes through that on some level. And the internet is only making that problem worse. So you got to learn something from the internet, but then you got to step back and put on your own little detective hat and see how it works for you. All right, we'll see you in the next video.